This is the Second Studio, hosted by the Architecture and Design Office fame. My name is David Lee, and with me is Marina Borderonay. This week, our guest is Joshua Ramus.
Joshua is the founding principal at Rex Architecture Office in New York City.
Yeah, anyone who's in New York or the East Coast knows Rex. I feel like actually speaking with him has been a long time coming.
I know.
So we were very excited to talk with him because obviously we've known of his work for a while. With Joshua, we talk about his upbringing, how he got into architecture, of course. And then I think the bulk of the conversation was really about their approach to their work, and defending architecture, talking about architecture with clients, and the simplicity of their work in some ways, and the complexity of their work in other ways. And I think that was kind of the bulk of it. We covered a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, it was. I also like that he used, examples of projects to kind of like illustrate, his thoughts about how they work. I thought that was really cool.
Sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Chaos. They make award-winning design and visualization tools, and they're really pushing the boundaries with AI. Now, AI is shaking up the architecture and design world, and Chaos is taking a responsible approach. Their tools are built to help architects, designers, and visualization specialists to work faster and explore more ideas without replacing creativity. Basically, Chaos wants AI to make your imagination stronger, not take over. So you get to design with more freedom, create stunning visuals, and stay in control of your work. If you want to see what that looks like, tap the Chaos link in our show notes.
This is the Second Studio with myself, Marina, and our guest, Joshua. Here we go.
I'm kind of from all over the U.S. I was born in Connecticut. Parents separated when I was very little, and one parent went to rural North Carolina, and the other went to Washington, D.C. And then that parent moved to Seattle for my high school days. And I say I'm from Seattle because I think that for Americans, high school is a kind of watershed moment where you come into your own. And so I identify as being from Seattle, but have lived all over. And I had the unusual experience in Seattle of being on Bainbridge Island. And the parent that was in North Carolina, if I didn't say before, was in the Outer Banks. So I had this really crazy, beautiful period where my life was split between islands on both coasts.
Was there anything about that upbringing that foreshadowed your career in architecture? Either of your parents architects, an uncle who was an architect, anything like that, or Legos involved in the childhood?
My grandfather was a structural engineer, is a bridge engineer. And I wish I could say that had a big influence, but to be honest, I didn't. I knew that's what he did, but that didn't play much into my upbringing. And similarly, my parents in Bainbridge, we built a series of what are called panabode houses, which are Lincoln log houses, where it's a kit house where you design the house and then the logs show up and they're literally like Lincoln logs, and you put one layer of the house all the way around, and then another one, and you cut the windows with a chainsaw, and you cut the electrical, with these massive drills, But again, I wouldn't say that was what led me to architecture either.
Because your bachelor's is not in architecture, it's in
it was in philosophy,
yeah.
Which I think is a great background for architecture. I think philosophy is a great background for anything. It's certainly, it's great for teaching you to write and argue clearly, orate clearly, concisely, clearly, compellingly. To some degrees, it was the fact that I found philosophy to be, intellectually enjoyable, but it's not like you read the phenomenology of spirit and change how you live. And so it was a little bit of the dissatisfaction of the everyday impact of it that made me start to look or be receptive when architecture came along, and it came along in a really unusual way. I did philosophy, and I also was pursuing a second degree in mathematics. Yale changed its position on dual degrees right before my senior year, and they stopped providing and allowing you to have dual degrees.
Wait, so does that mean that you did, 4 or 3 years of pursuing a dual degree, and the last minute you couldn't?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So I did my Yale has this really beautiful thing where it doesn't matter what you study, you have to do a written thesis. And so I had organized to do my written thesis for philosophy in the fall. So I did that, and that's what my degree was in. But along the way, so because I was doing that, the only other thing I did in my undergraduate were art courses, to just sort of have this like buffer. And I had an extraordinary professor named Erwin Hauer, who was a remarkable sculptor. His sculpture is really incredible. He's better known, fortunately or unfortunately, for creating these kind of three-dimensional, for lack of a better word, bricks, tiles that you stack and create screen walls with. And a lot of sort of the mid-century modern and subsequently brutalist architects use them. So, if you can see the clear relationship with his sculpture. They're three-dimensional, and they always marry perfectly with the next one, but they make these incredible repetitious three-dimensional screen walls. And he encouraged me to go into either sculpture or architecture. And there was a professor, Esther de Costa-Meyer, who was sort of on loan to Yale after Scully stopped teaching at Yale, retired. And she was doing a survey course on modern European architecture in the grad school, and I took it, and that was it. So a combination of these two different professors that were both, super compelling, super, and they're just both remarkable people.
What was covered in the modern European course that captivated you? Like, were there specific projects that you remember seeing and learning about?
Well, I'd never heard of Mies before.
What's weird is that all of us are like embedded in architecture. It's weird to think that people don't know about Mies, or that there was at one point we didn't know about Mies.
I mean, at one point we didn't.
Okay, yeah. So Mies.
And that was it. Mies was it.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, your background in philosophy and then I think you said mathematics, they're like super different things.
But it
and
kind of
then
makes
sculpture,
sense, right?
and then, and it's kind of cliche, but for architects, those are actually the three kind of corners of the stool, or whatever you would describe, the three rows that intersect, and there's kind of architecture in the middle. I guess
what I find personally is that, look, and I say this all the time, that while beauty is incredibly important to us, to me, I'm not dumb enough to talk about it in public. And what I mean by that is I think that, joy, beauty, inspiration is incredibly important in architecture, but I don't think should be its main thrust. I think its main thrust is frankly more what I found missing in philosophy, which was how we can impact people's everyday lives. What can it literally do? And if I think about the projects that we've done that I'm the most proud, they are some kind of tool that transformed the primary user's ability to do what they do. So if it's a librarian, it changes how they curate information. If it's an artistic director or a performing artist, it allows them to create art they couldn't have conceived of previously. If they're a museum director, it helps them to overcome limitations in operational budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And that I find the most interesting part of what architecture can do. And the reason why I say we're not dumb enough to talk about beauty in public is that, and I say this to students all the time, if you attempt to argue what you're doing on terms of beauty and aesthetics, it reduces the whole discussion to, do I like it or do I not like it?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can say, hey, I like this. And your client says, I don't.
Yeah.
And then what?
So the conversation
and then that's
stops.
it, right?
Yeah.
The conversation stops. Whereas if you have a building that transforms what they do, it's funny that and I don't mean this as a Trojan horse, although it could be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to say that it's a way of convincing people to build things that they would find uncomfortable. But I will say that I think a lot of our work, you would look at it and you would assume that we'd had really intense aesthetic discussions. And in fact, we never had an aesthetic discussion at all. And so because we're so focused on the performative aspect of the project, it's like we almost get away with doing things that would otherwise be impossible to convince someone to do.
Yeah. So are the things that you're describing, I'm going to list a handful. Let me know if I got it correct. It's like program. It's probably there's a financial component that you're considering in some of the projects. I'm not probably, I know that, I'm sure that's the case. Mm-hmm. I guess engineering would be another one. Like these types of more, I guess they're sort of quantifiable, but more like you can actually state a position about it, and it's more rational. There's like a logic behind it. It's not the subjective, like you said, like I like it, I don't like it, then what do you do after that kind of conversation?
Let me qualify it a little bit, because what I don't want it to sound like is I'm espousing form follows function.
Okay.
Because I use the word perform as though it was somehow distinct from form.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And what I actually like about perform is it actually includes the word form. And as an example, what is the performative nature of the St. Louis Arch?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost 100% aesthetic, and it's performing. So I kind of want to qualify what I said to say that you have these different, it's almost like a stereo equalizer. And in every project, you're finding the balance between aesthetics, between program, between, whatever these different things. And you're tweaking them to maximize performance on the terms of that specific project.
Yep.
There's for good reason that the clients will often see architects, regard them with a fair amount of skepticism, with the assumption that you're trying to sell them or convince them to do something that is about your typically aesthetic agenda that will be at odds with their needs. Mm-hmm. And if you are focused on their needs and trying to embody their needs in ways that they couldn't have conceived, and in my experience, if you do that with incredible rigor and you try to eschew conventional reactions and you go back to first principles, it always begets something exciting, new, uncomfortable, challenging, aesthetically too. I've never seen it not. Mm-hmm. Even when doing so creates something that is seemingly incredibly banal. And you think of the Perlman at the World Trade Center, which is, people say, "Oh, it's just a dumb cube." And I'm like, okay, it's just a dumb cube sitting in the middle of Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Center site. Like that's pretty provocative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But also, it does not look like a dumb cube. I don't know what to say that.
So and there are reasons why we felt that was the right response for that site, why we felt it should be so subdued, so close to the memorial, and why we wanted the skin to transform so the building would have a kind of assert a respectful independence when it was in use. We felt that was the right combination of beauty and functionality. Mm-hmm. this may be a tangent at this moment, but I think to kind of unpack that more, the single most important thing about that building is this highly reconfigurable L of theaters that's hiding in the interior.
Mm-hmm.
And I say about that project that we can describe it equally out of desire and out of obligation. So there's not a single move that I wouldn't defend as being desirous on that project.
Mm-hmm.
But there's almost not a single move where it's also not coming out of an obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So we veiled the building in stone, in translucent stone. What most people don't know is that was actually kind of a requirement at the World Trade Center. The commercial guidelines state that you can't see any kind of commercial activity from the memorial. So you couldn't see intermission, you couldn't see the restaurant, you couldn't see ticket sales. It had to be veiled. And so with that as a base requirement, veiling the building, veiling this incredibly reconfigurable core, created this really beautiful tension where you have a building that, a lot of architects will say, I made an incredibly complex building and it will reveal itself to you over time. This building plays a different game. It's super simple, apparently, and every time you use it, you have a radically different experience. You'll see theater in an end stage with 600 people. You'll see chamber opera with 400 in a traverse, and you enter the auditorium from all different sides. The next time, every time the procession and the dimension and the configuration is different. And the more you use it, actually, the more it confounds understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Then you walk back out and it's just this seemingly little dumb cube. And that was the game we thought would be beautiful. We called it the mystery box in the competition. That actually that would become the thing that made this project really unique. So again, even in that situation, both how to react properly to the sobriety of the memorial, but also how to use that to play an experiential game with the radical reconfigurability of the interior. And I would say on those terms, it's highly performing.
Yeah.
In that respect of both form and functionality.
I think the performance or perform is an interesting word to describe architecture and what it does. And it's interesting also because it focuses on it focuses on the effect it has on people. That's one lens. Mm-hmm. Also, like the others I listed, like from an engineering standpoint, cost standpoint, whatever else. But it focuses the conversation on the effect rather than focusing on like the thing itself too much. And I feel like that allows openness for you, the architect, for us as architects, and also the clients to think more about, again, the performance of it. And the architecture is a means to an end. Whereas I think sometimes when clients in particular focus on the architecture itself, they aren't able to be as loose to say, okay, well, it could be something different, because what we're actually trying to do is to have an effect, have an impact, and how we get there is through the architecture. And therefore, the architecture could be 3 or 4 or 5, 100 different things. As long as we get to that end point, it's fine. And it kind of shifts the focus away from the debate of, blue versus red facades or whatever the heck it would be.
Mm-hmm. But I will say again that I'm not sure those discussions are important. As I said, I've almost found that when you're having the performative discussion, the aesthetic ones fall to the wayside.
They just don't happen.
It builds trust, and they're willing to rely on your judgment. But again, I want to say that is still incredible. We don't do anything that we don't think is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, of course. No, yeah. Are most of your clients developers, as opposed to I don't know what?
No, we have all kinds. I will say that our developer clients are all super sophisticated. Mm-hmm. We're super lucky that way. The developers we've worked with are Brookfield and Tishman Speyer and Two Trees, and these are all entities that develop and retain ownership. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the turning the biggest profit as quickly as possible and walking away. It's, you know, they're gonna own and maintain these buildings, and therefore longevity is important to them. The integrity of the project is important to them, and that means that, you know, they attract and retain sophisticated staff who understand architecture, I suspect, quite differently than many developers' teams.
Yeah.
And so we have enjoyed working with all of them immensely, and we've had really great conversations with them during design.
Did you find, I know it's hard to make generalizations, but do you find that developer clients versus others have a better grasp of, and maybe it's also you work with a certain subset of developers for sure, but they have a better grasp of some of these ideas, or they get it quicker?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think we've been extremely lucky with who we've worked with as developers, but I'd say we've also been pretty damn lucky who we've worked with as non-developer clients. And you know, going back even to my earliest projects, you know, doing the Seattle Central Library while at OMA, the library board and the city librarian were wildly competent people.
Yeah.
And the thing I will always say about a good client are those that can take educated risks. So they're not pushovers. You know, the library board, the city librarian, they put very high bars, but they were wise enough and confident enough that if they pushed and dug and interrogated something long enough and the bar was high enough that if you surpassed it, they'd go forward with it. And that, you know, that project obviously had a huge impact on my career, and there's certain, you know, incredibly important moments in that project that made many of the ideas we're discussing about right now really clear. And one of them was when we pulled the design out of the box. You know, it was like crickets in the room, and we were presenting at one of the board members' houses who had a beautiful house on Lake Washington, and they asked me and Rem to go outside and kind of go for a walk on the dock, which felt like walking the plank. And
just keep walking and don't stop until you hit water.
And we're looking at each other like, you know, oops, like maybe we went too far. Like, and we came back in, and one of the board members, you know, within a group that was extraordinary, particularly extraordinary, and she said, "We don't know what this is, but we know how it embodies every idea and decision we've discussed and made up to this point. Like, you've justified that. You've explained how it's the embodiment of everything we need. And so we'll go forward with it."
Yeah. That's a cool client. That's amazing.
That's amazing because they were not scared of the fact that they did not know what it was.
Oh, well.
Or maybe they were, but,
scared.
but they were probably confident in it enough that did not deter them from, you know, not going that route. So it's kind of, it's fascinating that you could present something that is actually exactly what people were asking for, not what they would have ever imagined it to be in terms of form, right? And still have them like go for it. And I think that, that's definitely the type of client that I think most architects would be wanting to work with, because it really lets, you know, our creativity be what it needs to be.
It also is incumbent on the architect, though, to to have good ideas, first of all, and then be able to communicate them in a certain way to take a client on a journey, so to speak.
And not shy away from, you know, just try and give the client what they ask for, like stick to the brief too much, where it doesn't become anything exciting or new or interesting, right?
those clients, though, are also the very same clients who, if you came in and just started making an aesthetic argument, would also eviscerate you.
Mm-hmm.
So, when people say, oh, you've got great clients, I would say yes. And great clients, you have to rise to the occasion. Right? It's not just like, oh, it's easy because I've got a great client.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we're working with someone right now who has a reputation for being very difficult. We haven't found him difficult at all. Right? He's no bullshit. And we come into meetings and we make arguments that are about the performance of the project. And yeah, he interrogates us, and sometimes it's rough. I think he would say that we would hold our own in those meetings.
Yeah.
And we're not scared of them. And we're not scared of him because the discussions are about everything. They're about what are his entity's risks in terms of leasing or sales, and how do they impact schedule and impacts on procurement. And we're coming up with systems that would allow for faster erection sequences, and those things are informing the design and the aesthetics of the design, but making things that are also highly unusual. And he's totally on board with that, and is able to allow those things to drive really unusual, unexpected aesthetic embodiments.
I'm going to mention two different approaches to architecture, and let's say even more specifically client meetings that I've witnessed or seen, which seem very different from your approach. And I'd love your thoughts on it. The first is that it's pretty common in architects for them to post-rationalize something. And to be clear, it's not like the idea always comes first in the actual process. The idea reveals itself after you ponder for a week after looking at the thing. But I'm talking about like really serious post-rationalizing the thing just because you want to do it and you make up some reasons, as one example. Mm-hmm. Another example is the architect has a project and they have a series of ideas that they honestly feel are good, but they choose to present the project in a different way to the client because the architect thinks that's a better way to convince the client. So like I'm gonna call it bullshit, but a made up metaphor, for this thing that looks like a fallen bird or whatever, which was not part of the architect's thinking or their process or the teams at all, but they do it because, we know the client loves birds or, whatever the thing might be.
Unfortunately, I'll say unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. And there are clients for whom you have to do that. Mm-hmm. We had a massive project in another country, and it was a country in which there was a certain type of construction that was really used predominantly on multifamily residential high-rise properties. And we came up with a concept that would reduce the construction by about 33%, by a third, and talked about all the money it would save. And it created something, a very unusual typology that actually maximized light views, cross ventilation, while also reducing construction speed.
That sounds amazing. Like what?
And after this really intense, elaborate presentation between me and our structural engineer talking about, how the whole thing worked and everything, the decision maker went, I don't understand. What animal is it?
What animal is it?
And we're like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, oh, well, they presented a dragon and they presented, a firebird. What is your animal? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then we lost the commission because
Yeah.
we didn't know what animal it was. You know, and
You got to work on your improv.
so the reality is that there are some people who are wiser than I am who would go into that meeting and be like, yeah, just shut up and tell them what animal it is. That would make me throw up in my mouth. But, there are people who know how to read the room better than I do, and are quite successful at that.
Yeah.
I suspect I come off as a little bit too erudite, probably not very touchy-feely. And, when people are hoping to have this kind of amazing experience with their architect, there's something about being warm and charming and charismatic, and where you feel like this is a person I want to go have drinks with. I don't think I exude that.
But that's good because at least you're filtering to the clientele that is meant for you and not, to like 90% of the population. So.
Yes, although that also means I'm filtering out potential projects in the same breath.
Yeah.
Is most of your work won by competition?
A lot is not. Is it most? I mean, we have a lot of repeat work with the developers I mentioned. Although a lot of that work is through competition. I'm trying to think about the projects that we
are, and
I would say like maybe 2/3 are competition and a third are somehow some sort of selective competition.
Mm-hmm.
Not a design competition, but you go through an intensive interview process.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Whereas the 2/3 are like design competitions where you're producing. I know that model it seems to be much more common and prevalent in Europe, less the United States. I've always felt and seen and heard from colleagues that competitions of X scale, and depending on what they're requiring from the people participating, are just brutal things to do because it requires a lot of energy, time, and money to do it, and you just don't. So I guess sometimes you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know the mindset of the jury. Like there's just a lot of risk involved.
Look, there is an enormous irony that you'll have major international competitions in which they shortlist 20 firms who have to do, models at 2 different scales, 12 A0 boards, each with, 20 renderings in total. You have to fly there for an interim and a final. And you have to provide complete area takeoffs and a cost estimate. That's 20 firms. And then they say it has to be highly sustainable.
It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars of work.
But the money aside is like the amount of human effort in just plane flights. This building will never get out of its carbon debt of just the competition. You've made 20 firms each doing 2 models is 40 models that you've produced around the world and shipped to the site. Like just start with that, and you want it to be, benchmark of sustainability. Fuck off. But that's super common.
Yeah.
I think competitions are, the problem with the competition is that everything that I've been espousing early on in our conversation is very difficult to do in a competition. You don't get to discuss the project with the client. The best competitions we've had, and the Perlman is a good example of this, are competitions in which they do concept design with, in that case, 3 firms simultaneously. So you are engaging them.
Right.
And you are getting feedback. And in that particular instance, they said, we're going to do this competition. We're going to do a concept design, but we're not, whoever wins, that's not going to be the building that we choose. We ended up having a great interaction with that client, a great rapport, and we not only won, but they chose to move forward with our project. After saying they wouldn't, right? That the basis of the competition was, that won't happen. But
Interesting.
I think there are other ways of finding the right architect. There's also, we have competitions where we'll be shortlisted, and you look at the firm shortlisted and you're like, we have nothing in common. So what you're realizing is that these people have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. It's like the decision was made almost from day one before anyone producing work, or at least half of the entrants could be kicked out before even putting any effort.
Yeah.
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 How much of your work is international versus US based or New York based?
Maybe it's also 2/3 international, 1/3 US.
Wow.
We have projects right now, 2 in Australia, 1 in South Korea, 2 in South Korea, 1 in Abu Dhabi.
And now a little break for our show sponsors. Dear architects, design leaders, and founders redefining the industry, if you want to shape not only buildings, but the business behind them, this is your moment. Future London Academy's Executive MBA takes you inside the boardrooms of Pentagram, Uber, Zaha Hadid Architects, and Google, where you'll master finance, strategy, and operations from the people who already excel at them. Study along peers transforming the industry worldwide, and do it all in just 9 intensive weeks over 1 year between London and California. The program is award-winning, transformative, and crafted for design and architecture leaders with 15 or more years of experience. If you're ready to grow your impact, apply now by tapping the Future London Academy link in our show notes. Say goodbye to design-unfriendly spreadsheets. Programma, built by designers for designers, provides an integrated suite of tools for every phase of your project, from mood boards to advanced specification tools to project management. Seamlessly integrated, easily shareable, and always current, Programma reduces redundancy and minimizes costly errors. Share your work in the format that works for you, be it PDF spec sheets or online branded client dashboards with always up-to-date specification details. Join Interior Design movers and shakers and start for free by clicking the Programma link in our show notes. Experience the difference with Programma, software built for interior design workflows. Wait, actually for some context, how large is your office? Like how many people do you have at Rex?
Right now, we're on the smaller end of our normal size. We're 25.
Okay.
We vacillate between 25 and 35, and we will. So, in my opinion, there is a cliff that happens when a firm surpasses about 50 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think with very few exceptions, and I won't name. There's one exception in particular, which I'll say Herzog Demerol. I think that they have grown, and I don't think the quality of the work has curtailed. But I think they are an incredible outlier.
Yeah.
And I think that they are organized structurally in a way where they are very intentional about how they maintain that quality. But again, I think they are an incredible outlier. So we only have architects in the studio. We don't have a single non-architect. We outsource absolutely everything else. And so we have set the studio up such that we literally can't grow past 40. Assuming that, a normal firm would have a lot of, have the business services, BD, PR, AVIT, not AVIT, IT, legal, they'd have that in-house. We outsource all of that. So our 40 is maybe a normal 50, and we just won't take work beyond that. So
what's the thinking behind having all of the other, roles of an office, the ones you just mentioned, be outsourced as opposed to being internal?
It's super clear. As I said, I think if you, the moment a conventional firm goes past 50, I think that the intelligence of the firm starts getting dumbed down. You see firms that weirdly plagiarize themselves, if you know what I mean by that.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
You see that they're plagiarizing. They become at a dimension where the people doing the work feel they have a right to the legacy work of the firm, but they don't understand it. They don't have the control of it. And so they produce work that if anyone else produced would be eviscerated for plagiarism.
Yeah.
And yet they produce it under the name of the firm that did it. And so with that in mind, your question was...
what was my question?
Why outsource? Why outsource? But the problem is that at 50 people, it's not quite big enough to have a world-class, business services.
You gotcha.
It's just not enough work. And so, and you probably don't have enough revenue to support someone full-time. And so what I found is that we can have incredible, I'll give you an example. We outsource our business services, and the team that we work with, they know absolutely everything there is about R&D tax credits.
Right.
If I hired that person in-house, would that person know everything about R&D tax credits? No.
Right.
And that's just one example. And would they know how to build up the fee basis for State Department work? No. But you work with a firm that has 100 clients,
right? And
they've been in business for 30 years. They've seen all that, and they know how to do it. And so you get a quality. And if I look at how much I pay them a year, it's less than if I brought that person in-house.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I also feel like there is something nice about not having those departments, like within the office space itself, because I've noticed from past experience that, some of those people who are not architects or designers do have a tendency to somehow influence how the office, starts to feel and function in a way that just becomes kind of like a bureaucratic machine rather than a design studio. And the feeling of the place becomes completely different. So I think it's very interesting that you're doing it the way you're doing it.
I have an expression that we would prefer to be Vermeer than Warhol.
Okay.
Right. We'd prefer if we do 15 or 20 exceptional buildings in my lifetime, I would rather do that than be churning out beautiful, but nonetheless, 100 copies of a print.
Yeah.
And that's one of 1,000 different things that we've produced. Yeah. And it's sometimes a difficult business model. We typically have between 5 and 8 major projects going. They're all major. We don't have any small work or bread and butter. I shouldn't say small. We will do it. We don't really care about the size, but we'll have 5 to 8 major projects that we really care about. We don't have bread and butter. And it means that, when there's a downturn in the economy or chance has a couple of projects go on hold or stop.
Yeah.
It's a really,
it impacts you guys.
But at that, and on the other hand, we're a firm that has 25 people who can have more than $2 billion worth of work under design and construction.
Are you guys
that's
often
odd? Right?
Are you guys often operating as the architect of record, at least for local projects, or how does that work?
We always want to. There are many projects where that, if you know what I think particularly we American architects have done a great job of neutering ourselves. And so, we created this whole concept of the design and executive architect, this idea that the person with the good idea is a petulant child who needs, a handler. I don't know how you design without knowing how to build, and I don't know how you can build without knowing how to design. So
yeah, that's fair.
I think it's absolutely idiotic. What happens when we are the design architect is we do what, first of all, we'll only do a project that we're involved start to finish.
Sure.
If it's in a location in the world where they say, yeah, we want you to disappear after schematic design or design development, we say, okay, no thanks. No interest. But even when we are involved to the finish, or even being involved to the project's finish, there's the expectation that the work goes to a local architect of record, and therefore we have to do what I call construction document light. So we do more work than we're getting paid for, and then we're the ones who care. So we're actually the ones solving the problems during construction documents and construction administration, in which we're not getting the fee to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be far happier to be the architect of record. And I'm licensed also in the Netherlands, and I'm licensed in Australia. I'm licensed all over the United States. We often, even if we are not the architect of record for the entirety of a project, we often, even in places like Australia, will be the architect of record for the enclosure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So yeah, we are always want and would prefer to just be an architect.
Do you guys take the same approach, which is to say, being more involved or the most involved with the interiors of your buildings, or are you often
we've other than projects in which it's speculative, offices and we wouldn't do a project in which we aren't in control of the interiors.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned, our profession kind of self-neutering or whatever you said, I think that critique or take is applied in a lot of different ways over the last, number of decades. And the interiors is one of those things. Like we do houses, so it's a very different scale than what you do. But we see it all the time, especially on the West Coast compared to the East Coast. Like those two, the interiors and architecture, are like completely divorced, to the point where when I first arrived back in California and I was talking to folks and I would say, I'm an architect, and they'd say, do you do design as well? And I was like, your moment with the animal thing, I was like, I don't,
what do you mean?
And I've since learned that this is part of, I don't know what happens here. This is the professional landscape. But there's all this like splitting off, and the architect, I think, I'm sure there's a graph somewhere or analysis where their role has just kind of gotten chop, and it's, you chop so much, and at some point it becomes this very continuous thing that as a profession we're trying to still be something, but meanwhile we're losing arms and legs left and right.
I mean, the only projects where we're not controlling the interiors, it's spec office in which we're doing the lobbies, elevator lobbies, restrooms.
Yeah.
But because you don't do the office space.
Yeah.
But even on the large developer residential work, we're doing the condo interiors.
Yeah.
I was wondering, so at that scale of an office, you're able to be involved in every single project that the office is doing?
That's why I don't want it to grow past that 40. Is that I want to be involved in everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have several principals that I love working with, and I want them to be involved. I really enjoy CD and CA. I think that's where projects, again, I'll go back to Nice. The fact that, can you imagine Nice not worrying about how the wall meets the floor?
It's a schematic design.
That window detail.
He's handing it off. Yeah. Is it, but do you have, I mean, you're the person at the top and obviously, you're involved in all the projects, but is it hard to find or to make or to have time to still be involved? Because it's very easy, even when you're partitioning out, the legal things and whatnot, you're still, I'm assuming, still doing business development, all the other stuff you have to do as a business owner. Is it hard to get time in the studio to like be involved?
Yes and no. Yes, and the no part is, I said I have these three amazing principals with me, who are fantastic, and do an enormous amount of that work with me, and that's been, a huge relief.
Yeah,
to share that burden. And they're people that have grown up in the office. They all have around 15 years of experience in the office, and I trust them explicitly and implicitly. They may make different decisions, but I wouldn't make a better one.
Right.
That's been a pretty important evolution in the firm.
I want to ask you about, because zooming out and talking about your career, you were at OMA. How long were you at OMA for?
10 years.
Okay, that's a long time. I'm assuming not a lot of sleep happened during those 10 years.
No.
Okay. I've literally only met one person who worked at OMA, and I just met them recently, who was like, they worked in the not the New York office, the main office.
Rotterdam.
And they were like, I was the only person who went home on time. And
yeah, but they didn't stay
like,
very long.
Huh?
They didn't stay very long there.
I think we were talking about different people.
Oh, maybe we are.
But anyway, what I was going to say is 10 years at OMA, the Seattle Public Library, you split off on your own. And looking back on how long have you had Rex now? It's been...
It kind of happened in 2005, and it formally happened to the outside world in beginning of 2006.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's been 21 years.
I'm curious, like, so you split off.
But there's a part of our history that most people don't know, but actually Rex is OMA New York.
Yes. Yeah.
I purchased Rem out of the company. He and I owned the company 50-50, and when we separated, I bought him out. So there's a weird thing that Rex's articles of incorporation say OMA New York.
But so this is like, now it was not going to be my question, but there is an OMA office in New York. You got friends who work there. So are they OMA 2.0 in LLC? Like what?
I think they are legally something called OMA AMO.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is fine. I mean, I have no, technically speaking, I think OMA New York is one of our DBAs.
Right.
I certainly don't
use it.
have any interest in using it, nor do I have any interest in suggesting they shouldn't be using it.
Yeah.
It's just part of our unusual history.
Yeah. But so for the time you split off, it's been about 20 years, let's say, around that mark. And how do you see yourself relative to OMA and Rem Koolhaas? I mean, you're doing your own work and you're focused on that, but I guess another way to phrase the question is, how do you think your approach and what you're doing is different from what OMA is or was doing? Like, is there a design philosophy approach that's different? Is it like, how do you see that differentiation?
First, and I don't. This isn't meant to be flip, but I don't really think about that.
Yeah.
And I can only talk about OMA for the time I was there, and that's now 20 years ago. So
sure.
Even when I was there was if you put the Seattle Library and the Porto Concert Hall side by side, they look like genetic sisters.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that they came to be in exactly the opposite way, right? Seattle is obsessively rational, and Porto is beautifully intuitional, if that's a word. Every angle, every move on Seattle is argued, whereas Porto started out as a kind of amazingly intricate, intuitional house that got put on steroids and blown up into the size of a concert hall. And all I can say is that we are still pursuing the same ideas that were so powerful at Seattle. And even to the extent that the overall geometry of Seattle appears willful, and I will argue that it's not, but it appears willful, it's still a bunch of dumb boxes stacked on top of each other. So if you denuded it,
right,
it would still look, I have a certain predilection for simple forms. I would say that in the last couple of years, I've started lecturing about, or including in lectures, the notion that what started out I thought as a predilection was in fact something very intentional that I just hadn't been able to articulate for a long time, which is the geometric simplicity of our work, which I think in retrospect, whether or not it was gestating or not, it's certainly very intentional now.
Okay.
Which is, first, humans build Cartesian. Until we start 3D printing buildings, our materials, our methods of measurement, we build Cartesian.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
The world is full of buildings that I think are delightful in their exuberance and form making, where you get close to them and you just go, holy fuck, this is terrible. Because nothing aligns, nothing is in plane, and my OCD has to run out immediately. Like, I can't handle it. In fact, I ran out of most Cartesian buildings because it doesn't align. And our ability to build even Cartesian is bad. Yeah. So, so that's one thing. It's just, I think that our ability to build something timelessly, exquisitely is greatly increased by that simplicity or purity. But there's another very intentional thing, which is, I'll use the the Perlman as a great example of that. The building has maybe 15 facade details.
Wait, restate, which building was that?
The Perlman.
Okay.
As opposed to a conventional building, which might have 150. And that reduction in the emphasis on repetition and scale allows us to take the same amount of money and do way more with it. If you look at a project like 2050 M Street, there's a field condition, there's a parapet condition, there's a corner condition, there's a transition from the storefront at grade into the field condition of the curtain wall. Actually, it's not a curtain wall. It's weirdly, it's actually a store-fronted system, but anyway, they're not what you think is a curtain wall. And that's how we were, the whole bunch. So all I'm getting is it allows us to really push the envelope, pun intended. And we've started talking about phenomenology over form. Creating buildings and wall systems and experiences that will change over the course of the day and the year in pretty radical ways. The Perlman illuminating at night,
right.
The way light hits the facades of the Lindemann, that I think are super powerful. And I would rather direct the money there than in just a crazed form that will likely go out of fashion quickly.
Interesting.
And that has to come with some, I talked about, you just do dumb boxes. That I've sat in on public selection processes for major projects in which the board is discussing the firms, and that is what they say about our work. Oh, it's just a dumb box. So you have to, some people understand the power of the refinement of it. Some people understand Mies, some people understand Bunshaft. Bunshaft.
Oh, is it really behind you?
Yeah. So in fact, I'm sitting in Bunshaft looking at Bunshaft. Our building, our office cool. is a what I call the poor man's Seagram building. It's Bunshaft SOM building.
Are you guys where are you guys located in the city? I can't tell.
140 Broadway. We're in the building with the Noguchi cube, the red Noguchi cube out in front.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool.
And we're across from that one, which also has a Noguchi courtyard, sunken courtyard.
Is there a type of project that you'd really love to do next that you haven't done?
There's two things I would love to do. Three things. Two of them are very similar. we have not yet done a proper symphony or opera, and I would love to do that. It's why we are so obsessed with performing arts buildings. I was a musician as a younger person, kid and a younger person, and actually went to Yale thinking I would be a musician.
What did you play? Performance?
I was a horn player.
What kind of horn?
French horn.
No kidding. I was a trumpet player.
Right.
Yeah, French horn is tough, man. It's that mouthpiece is really
tiny.
It's tiny, and it's like the rim is so thin. You're slipping and sliding all over the notes. I don't know how you guys do it.
I still have an indentation.
Do you really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you must have been a pretty serious player then.
Yeah. As I said, that was the reason I selected Yale was proximity to a teacher and the music department.
Did you do you still play at all? How are your chops?
My chops, I mean, the problem with any brass instrument, but particularly horn, is that if you're not playing a lot, your embouchure, your muscles get very weak. I can play beautifully for about 5 minutes. My muscles start to shake.
Yeah.
I really can't. I can't do it. And that, so that's. I pick it up less and less because the experience is shorter and shorter and less satisfying.
Well, if you play 5 minutes in the office every day, you're back on track.
I wouldn't do that.
It's funny though. I have it's pretty common. I have the same experience. Like it's strange. So I stopped playing seriously after college. It's been a long time, but for many years after that, I could still pick up the trumpet and play pretty well for, like 20 minutes and then 15 and then 10 and then 5. And now it's like just a couple minutes and then it's not worth anything. And it's
But the crazy thing is your muscle memory is there. Maybe not with your lips, but with your,
I know.
I still can do fingering without thinking. I will play, Mahler's Fourth, and I don't think about what I'm doing.
Yeah. But the lips might not be aligned with the fingers.
The lips can't do it, but the hand knows.
That's interesting.
I even remember alternate fingering for some reason. I know if I need to bend a note, I should be doing it on the F horn and not the C horn. And I don't know why I know that.
That's awesome. So you still have your French horn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
We're actually, the time went by super fast. One of my last questions is, what is your,
you asked, the other thing I would say is that I absolutely definitely want to do is an airport.
Is I say again?
An airport.
Oh, an airport.
It's funny. I was going to ask you,
it's systems thinking.
Yeah, if there is a building that you do not like to do, or you would not want to do.
No, but airport, is this something you want to do?
Oh, yeah. No. I desperately want to do an airport.
Wow, those are super complex.
We would do the best airport in the world. I have no doubt.
Because of you said the systems thinking.
Yeah, it's the ultimate systems challenge.
What's interesting is that in this conversation, everything you're saying, it makes complete sense, and I'm aligned with it. But it just occurred to me that there are a lot of architects who don't practice the same way as you, which is totally fine. But like the way you approach buildings is a very, how to phrase it, like your mind is very open to thinking about it through different lenses, as opposed to just focusing on like the artifact itself and saying, how do I make it pretty? Like you're thinking about, like you said, even the financial construction methods, and it's not like most architects operate that way. I think it's really easy actually for architects over time to limit their thinking more and more because of maybe the practicality of everyday life and what it means to practice as an architect, but to like just narrow the thinking more and more to like, okay, give me the program, fine, okay, boxes, some nice facade thing, and then they're done. There's not much more to it than that. Well,
so that goes all the way back to where I started with philosophy. Internally, when I teach also, we talk and emphasize this idea of being able to articulate the narrative arc of a project, being able to articulate, these are the issues we're focused on, these are our positions on those issues, and this is why the building embodies those positions. Mm-hmm. And to your point, creating that narrative is not linear. sometimes you have an intuition about the manifestation of it, and sometimes you can clearly articulate the issue, but you can't quite figure out the position. And so it's sort of over time, it sort of takes hold. But we don't stop, even if we have something we think is compelling, if we can't create that compelling narrative. Even to the point that we have clients who will say sometimes, I feel like we're handcuffed into the solution. And I'm like, well, that's good, actually. That means we have actually, while you may feel constrained right now, what I know from experience is that will make the project far easier to defend in the public realm, far easier to defend, to be able to, if it's a public project, to be able to tell the public, this is the array of things we could have done, and this is why we did what we did. And we may end up being wrong, but at least it was done wisely. It was done intentionally. It was not a whim. It was not about my feelings and my vision.
Right.
We can defend the investment. And as I said, there's a bunch of things I'll say about that. I often liken it to, the power of talk therapy. There's arguments about what happens in the brain when you can finally articulate trauma, and that you can't control it, and therefore you can't overcome it until you can articulate it. Not that architecture is traumatic, but I think, in a similar idea that until you can fully create a narrative that's watertight, you're not in control of it. And so we don't stop until we get that. And when I'm teaching, and I require the students always, every time we meet, whether it's me individually or meeting as a group, they have to do this stupid thing where they say, this is the issue or issues, this is the position or positions, and this is why the building, my proposal, embodies it. And inevitably, some portion of the studio or the whole studio will have this moment where they're like, oh, you're just teaching us how to present.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm teaching you the entire space of architecture. Because the only thing you will put into this world, unless you are wildly independently wealthy, is that which you can argue.
Yep.
And so, if you want to be a paper architect, I've just lost his name. I wanted to say extraordinary paper architect who passed away about 5 years ago. Anyway, he did great things in the world, but there's a reason it's not built. And there's nothing wrong with what he did. But if you want to build, you're only going to build what you can argue.
Yeah. It's not Lebbeus Woods, is it?
It was Lebbeus Woods.
There we go.
I was vacillating between Neil Denari and Daniel Libeskind, which you can see how within that was
But those guys are both still alive.
They're still alive.
Yes,
So yeah.
But that's why I was like, it's neither of those people. I don't want to prematurely end their career.
Yeah. Announcement, everyone. Neil Denari is no longer with us. Yeah.
But it was just the name that I was sort of, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lebbeus Woods. Extraordinary person. No critique.
Yeah, it's funny with what you're saying. Where my mind goes is I just got back from doing some thesis crits, undergraduate thesis crits, and there's a person at the school, like a school journalist, interviewing critics, and they asked me, like, why is this important? And I was like, well, there's many reasons, but one of them is if you ever have any hope to be an architect doing real buildings, there's no way you're going to get anything built unless you have the ability and to present. But I also agree, it's not just about presenting. It's evidence that there is a reason behind your actions, and you just can't go around, without any reason.
It's like an attorney in court. Like, you have to be able to defend your case. It's the same thing.
Yeah. If it's not sensible graphically and in language and in your speak, then something's amiss. That's just the way it is. Unless there's a really good idea, but you just lack the ability to describe it because you haven't like thought about it quite enough. That can happen. But beyond that, if it can't be talked about or presented successfully, then I think it's just evidence that something's missing.
There's also a power in the editorial function of it, in that it distills what is immutable about a project.
Mm-hmm.
And just as I said that over time, what I thought was a predilection has become intentional in terms of the simplicity of the form and its impact on what we can do with the enclosures. There's also something where we've become very intentional about limiting the ambitions of a project to 1, 2, 3 things.
Yeah.
And being very clear with the client that those are the immutable things, and everything else we'd like to get, and if we don't, we don't. And when they see that that's true, they also relax. And to be clear, those 1 or 2 or 3 things are usually crazy ambitious, right? The things that would put anyone way out of their comfort zone. But because we articulate them so clearly that those are the things, so for example, on the Lindemann, it's the automated reconfigurability of the hall, and this idea of this clear story that plows to the building that means that you have the interaction between the interior and exterior worlds of the project in a place that most people think would be acoustically and performatively, it would be impossible. And yet we proved it was possible and did it. And it's giving great returns on how the community engages in the work that's being produced there. The community, both in terms of Brown University, but also Providence at large. And I'll give an example of how powerful that is. There was a moment I was on site. It was towards the tail end of COVID, so things were sort of coming back to life. And there was a sheetrock sub and an electrical sub in the building. And I heard the sheetrock sub saying to the electrician, "You can't do that because that's at odds with," and then he mentioned the 2 core principles of the project. And I was like, holy shit. Like, if you have 2 subs articulating that and why, whatever the issue was, I don't remember what they were doing.
Yeah.
But it illustrates the power of the clarity of the argument, being judicious about what you're going to go to bat for. Clearly, those 2 things on that project are not for the faint of heart, meaning the building is not without ambition just because I can distill it into 2 ideas.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's because we could distill it into 2 ideas, and the client knew that those were the only 2 hills we'd die on, and that we were really malleable on everything else, that we were able to achieve them. And within our studio, I will say that all the time, which is, if you can reinvent the wheel once and, heaven forbid, twice or 3 times on a project, who gets to do that?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's a home run. Reinvent 1 wheel, let alone 2 or 3. Like, that's way more than most people get to do, and it's enough.
Yeah.
Right? We have this, architects, I think in general, we have this insecurity about, we're not doing enough. Is it enough? When the studio would get nervous about, go back to the Perlman, the simplicity of the Perlman, I was like, you have a thing on the interior that does 68 different stage audience configurations. That's never been done on the planet in history. Like, you don't think it's enough? What? And all 68 of those configurations we've taken through, smoke and life safety, and
crazy.
I've gotten C of like. So what more were you hoping to do on this project?
That's the focus of the ideas and everything you just said is. It's really interesting and it makes just a lot of sense. I think it's also maybe, I feel like it's like for younger architects, it's also easy for them to fall into the trap of wanting to do too much. It's almost like they want to put too many ideas into one thing, and it takes a level of maturity and a restraint sometimes to say, like, that's not what this needs to be about. But I really love the point, though, that when you distill it to one or two, ideas or moves or gestures, whatever it's going to be, that it greatly improves the chances of success with the project, as opposed to spreading yourself really thin and then everything gets cut out, and then pretty soon the project is like Swiss cheese at the end. Mm-hmm. It's a good one. Yeah, your last question, Marina?
Our last question, which is kind of a tradition at this point, is what is your favorite building?
And it doesn't have to be one of your own, although we've had some architects choose their own.
Yeah, I mean,
no, my favorite building, you should know, just absolutely Beinecke Rare Books Library at Yale.
That's the one that's who's the architect of that one again?
No, Bunshaft.
There's
a reason we're in a Bunshaft building right now.
That's the one with it also has a translucent facade, right? Yeah, phenomenal building. Yeah.
It although you could not do it today, it is the most exquisite thing I've ever been in.
Well, you couldn't do it today because
it's actually our starting point on the Perlman's facade was how could we figure out how to do something similar with today's energy requirements.
Gotcha.
It's an inch and a quarter thick monolithic marble. Like it's a radiator.
Yeah.
And then a very close second is Mongeralti's chapel just outside of Rome, which is lesser known and I don't know if you don't know it, it's extraordinary. And you will see why our work is the way it is, or I should say, you can see what I aspire to, and both of them are incredibly simple forms, where every inch of the building has been labored over. The chapel by Mongeralti, if you don't know it, it has this, for lack of a better description, like a clear story. So the first thing is that it's incredibly modern, at the same time has a tactility and humanity to it, which I really appreciate. It has these. It was the first time anyone tried to do a translucent insulated panel. So it's got these white translucent panels that have, which the white is actually the insulation in the interlayer. But there's a clear story at the base, like the first 3 inches is actually clear glass. And so when you're in the space, it floods the whole floor plane with light, and the rest of the walls are illuminated, but they're not as bright. And so every Stanley Kubrick film has copied that. If you want it to feel you're on sacred ground, spread the floor with bright light with a luminescence around it. It's like you can hear it go, oh, it's so insanely beautiful, and you're like, why didn't anyone ever think of
it's
that?
A simple move too.
Yeah, we were looking at it just as you were speaking. It's a pretty incredible building.
That's amazing. Yeah. The time went by super fast. Thank you so much for making the time on a are we Friday?
We are Friday.
on a Friday. This was really, really interesting, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, with pleasure.
If you like what we're doing, then please support the show by leaving a review of us in the Apple Podcast app. You can also find us on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram. Our handle is Second Studio Pod. Website is Second Studio Pod. Oh, you just dropped your headphones and water. What else is there? We have a hotline. So if you have guest suggestions or topics that we should talk about or questions you want us to try and answer, that number is 213-222-6950. So you can leave a voicemail there or shoot a text message. And beyond that, we have a lot more cool stuff coming out with great guests. Stay tuned, and we appreciate you listening. Talk soon. Bye.